Before dawn breaks over the forbidden city, while the emperor still sleeps in his dragon-adorned chambers, thousands of invisible hands are already at work. These are the palace helpers, the eunuchs, maids, and servants, whose lives revolved entirely around maintaining the grandeur of Imperial China. Today, we're stepping back in time to experience one full day in the life of a palace helper during the Ming Dynasty. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because life behind those vermilion walls was far more complex, dangerous, and utterly exhausting than you might imagine. Meet Xiao Mei. She's 16 years old and has been a palace maid for 2 years. Like thousands of other young women, she was selected from a commoner family to serve in the palace, a position that brought both honor and heartbreak to her family. They'll likely never see her again. It's 4 a.m., and Xiao Mei's day begins in the cramped servants' quarters, far from the opulent halls she'll clean today. The wake-up gong echoes through the darkness. She has exactly 15 minutes to wash her face with cold water, dress in her plain blue cotton uniform, and tie her hair into the prescribed simple bun. There's no mirror. Vanity is forbidden. By 4:30 a.m., she's already kneeling in the courtyard with dozens of other maids for morning roll call. A senior eunuch walks between the rows, checking attendance. One absence could mean severe punishment, not just for the missing servant, but for their entire work group. The collective punishment system ensured everyone watched everyone else. Now here's something fascinating. Xiao Mei hasn't spoken a word yet, and she won't for hours. Palace helpers lived under strict silence rules. Unnecessary conversation could be punished with beatings. They communicated through a complex system of hand signals and subtle gestures that took months to learn. At 5 a.m., breakfast, if you can call it that. A small bowl of thin rice porridge and a piece of pickled vegetable. She eats standing up in exactly 10 minutes. The meal is carefully calculated, enough energy to work, but not so much that servants become comfortable or complacent. By 5:30 a.m., Xiao Mei is assigned to her primary duty station, the Hall of Mental Cultivation, one of the emperor's personal chambers. She's part of a 20-person cleaning team, and they move like a choreographed dance. First rule, never turn your back to the emperor's throne, even when he's not there. Xiao Mei and her team walk backwards while sweeping, an awkward, back-breaking technique that takes years to master without tripping. Second rule, touch nothing that isn't part of your assigned task. That golden vase, don't even look at it too long. Those silk cushions, adjust them only if explicitly ordered. One misplaced item could trigger an investigation. In the paranoid world of palace politics, even a moved candlestick could be seen as evidence of espionage or theft. Now, let's talk about the eunuchs, because they're a crucial part of this story. Wang Fu is a 40-year-old eunuch who supervises Xiao Mei's section. Unlike the maids, eunuchs could rise to positions of tremendous power. Some became wealthier than provincial governors, wielding influence that made generals nervous. But that power came at an unimaginable cost. Wang Fu was castrated at age 8, a procedure his desperately poor family paid for, hoping he'd secure a palace position and send money home. Many boys died from the operation. Wang Fu survived but carries the trauma in his body and soul. At 7 a.m., the palace springs to full life. The emperor is awakening, which means synchronized chaos. Dozens of eunuchs rush to prepare his morning routine, heating water to the precise temperature, laying out robes chosen by the Board of Rites based on the calendar and astrological charts, preparing breakfast from kitchens a quarter-mile away that somehow must arrive steaming hot. Xiao Mei's team must finish cleaning and disappear before the emperor's procession arrives. They have 12 minutes. They scatter like ghosts, pressing themselves against walls in service corridors, heads bowed, eyes down. To make eye contact with the emperor, even accidentally, could mean death. By 9 a.m., Xiao Mei is reassigned to the empress's quarters. The palace operated on a rigid rotation system. Servants constantly moved between duties to prevent them from forming loyalties or gathering too much knowledge about any one location. In the empress's residence, the atmosphere is different. More eunuchs, more layers of supervision, and far more danger. Why? because this is where palace politics turn deadly. You see, the imperial harem wasn't just about the emperor's wives and concubines. It was a battlefield. Dozens of women competing for the emperor's attention, because that attention meant power, protection, and the ultimate prize, producing a male heir who could become the next emperor. Xiao Mei is now serving tea to the empress's ladies-in-waiting when she witnesses something she shouldn't, a whispered conversation, a passed note. She immediately looks away. One of the first things palace helpers learned was selective blindness and deafness. See nothing, hear nothing, remember nothing. But it's too late. A senior maid notices that Xiao Mei was in the room. That evening, Xiao Mei will be questioned by palace investigators. If she's lucky, they'll believe she truly didn't hear anything important. If she's unlucky, she might be imprisoned, tortured to ensure her silence, or simply disappear. This brings us to one of the darkest aspects of palace life: expendability. The Forbidden City employed tens of thousands of servants, but individual lives meant nothing. People vanished regularly. Some were executed for minor infractions. Others were secretly killed in political purges. Many simply died from overwork, disease, or accidents, and were replaced within days. Meanwhile, Wang Fu the eunuch is navigating his own treacherous waters. He's been approached by a lower-ranked concubine who wants him to deliver a message to someone outside the palace, probably a family member, possibly part of a plot. If he refuses, she might report him for disrespect. If he agrees and gets caught, he'll be executed for conspiracy. This is daily life. Every interaction is a potential trap. Noon brings a 15-minute meal break. Another bowl of thin rice, this time with a small piece of salted fish. Xiao Mei eats in complete silence with her work group, sitting on the ground in a service courtyard. She's exhausted, but there's no rest. The afternoon assignments are posted. She's been selected for laundry duty. This actually brings a small sense of relief. Laundry duty means working far from the main palace buildings, away from the dangerous intrigues. But it's brutal physical labor. The palace generates mountains of laundry daily. Imperial robes embroidered with golden dragons, silk sheets, countless towels and cloths. Everything must be washed by hand in enormous wooden tubs, using harsh soaps that crack and bleed the servants' hands. The water is cold, even in summer, drawn from palace wells. Xiao Mei and 30 other maids scrub for 3 hours straight, their backs aching, their hands turning red and raw. The imperial garments require special treatment. They can only be dried in designated areas, only folded in specific ways, and every item is meticulously inventoried. One missing handkerchief could trigger an investigation. At 4 p.m., something unusual happens, a brief moment of humanity. An older maid, seeing Xiao Mei's bleeding hands, quickly passes her a small tin of homemade salve. It's a gesture of kindness in a place where kindness is dangerous because forming personal bonds is discouraged. The authorities want servants loyal only to the empire, not to each other. But humans are humans. Secret friendships formed. Young maids became like sisters. Eunuchs created makeshift families among themselves. These relationships were the only thing that made the isolation bearable. By 5 p.m., Wang Fu is overseeing dinner preparations. The emperor's meal is an operation involving hundreds of people. Food tasters who risk their lives with every dish. Kitchen supervisors checking for poison. Servers who've trained for years in the precise choreography of imperial dining. Each dish travels through a chain of custody with paperwork. Yes, paperwork for food. Documenting every person who touched it. In a place where poison was a real threat, nothing was left to chance. As evening falls, around 7 p.m., Xiao Mei has her final assignment, night watch in one of the smaller courtyards. She'll spend the next 4 hours walking a designated patrol route with another maid, carrying a small lantern. This is when the palace becomes truly eerie. The grand halls and courtyards that bustled with activity now lie silent and shadowed. Palace helpers whispered about ghosts, and no wonder. So many people had died within these walls, often violently, often unjustly. But the real danger wasn't supernatural. Night watch was when security was tightest because that's when intrusions were most likely. Armed guards patrolled everywhere. If Zhao Mei strayed even slightly from her assigned path, she could be mistaken for an intruder and killed on sight. At 11 p.m., her shift finally ends. She returns to the servants' quarters, utterly exhausted. But before sleep, there's one more ritual. Evening inspection. A senior eunuch checks that all servants are accounted for, that no one is hiding contraband, that no one shows signs of illness that might spread. Illness was another terror. In the crowded servants' quarters, disease spread rapidly. Sick servants were often immediately expelled from the palace, a death sentence, since they'd lost their position and had no way to go. Zhao Mei finally lies down on her narrow wooden sleeping platform around midnight. She shares this space with 5 other maids, sleeping side by side with barely enough room to turn over. There's no heating in winter, minimal ventilation in summer. As she drifts towards sleep, she thinks about home, a small village she left 2 years ago. Does her family remember her? Will she ever see them again? Most palace maids served for life. Some, if they were fortunate and survived, might be released in their 30s or 40s, considered too old to serve. But by then, their families had moved on, their villages had changed. They were ghosts returning to a world that no longer had a place for them. Tomorrow, Zhao Mei's day will begin again at 4 a.m., and the day after that, and the day after that. For years, possibly decades, possibly forever. The ancient Chinese palace system was a marvel of organization and a monument to human hierarchy, taken to its extreme. For every moment of imperial splendor, there were thousands of invisible workers making it possible, living lives of relentless labor, constant danger, and profound sacrifice. These weren't just servants, they were people who gave up their freedom, their families, and often their lives to maintain a system that viewed them as expendable parts in a grand machine. The next time you see images of the Forbidden City or other imperial palaces, remember Zhao Mei and Wang Fu. Remember the 4 a.m. wake-up gongs, the bleeding hands, the whispered kindnesses, and the constant fear. That's the real story behind the golden roofs and vermilion walls. Would you have survived a day as a palace helper in ancient China? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.